So, why don't you tell us a little bit about Franchisor Advisor?
Well, how I got into this role is that I was in franchising for a long time. I mean, a couple of decades. So when you're building a franchise system, national, international, there's a lot of challenges. I mean, you have ideas, you have concepts, you want to move them forward. But how I got into this role is that built a big software company, sold it, and then COVID hit. Living in Central America, I decided, these franchise brands, these leaders, I feel they need help. I feel that 95% of them are getting into the franchise business, and they're not sure really what they're getting into. So Franchisor Advisor was born, and I started reaching out to companies that I felt needed some coaching. So that's really how it all came together.
Okay, well, tell us your journey. How did franchising find you?
Well, I was in the airline industry, and after the airline industry, I answered back in the day, if you can imagine that far back, as answering an ad in a newspaper for a car rental company in St. Petersburg, Florida. So I answered it, got the job. So that was in 1983, and that was during a merger of Holiday Rent-A-Car in Canada. So a lot of things were going on back then. No technology. I came in and brought all the technology in. A Chinese group bought it in 1989. I was senior VP at the time. I resigned, went to another franchise system called USA Rent-A-Car. Anyways, the franchise industry during that time, I don't want to say, it was tough. So I left franchising and then led a travel company to an IPO. That was even harder than running a franchise system. So in 1998, a Chinese shareholder of Payless Car Rental Systems reached out and said, need some help. Can you come back? And I said, no, I'm not going to come back in a position, but I'll consult. So to make a long story short, they were losing $100K a month. When I left, they were making $250,000 a month. Right. When I met with them again, they were losing $100K per month. Mm-hmm. And this is the real twist part. 12 of our largest franchisees had no plans of renewing the franchise agreement. Now, these franchisees were paying $30,000 to $50,000 a month in franchise fees and royalties. So your top 12 had no plans to renew. So the fixer-up story is very long because that was in 98 to 99 to guess what comes up at 2000, mm-hmm. Y2K. Y2K, all new computer systems. I built the reservation system in 85. That was going to fail. The phone system was going to fail. The admin was going to fail. So it was a very, very crazy time. And then I'll kind of end on this. But I really got back into it, CEO, president, all that thing, when I decided to go from consultant to really take this thing on. So 6 months after 9/11, if you can imagine 9/11, I had 100,000 cars sitting at airport lots all across the country because no one was flying, working with franchisees, trying to keep them involved, trying to keep them in business. And so after 9/11, I launched Payless Car Sales Systems, which soon became the largest independent used car sales in the United States with 60 plus locations. So that's how it kind of found me.
Cool. What about today? You're working with emerging franchisors, specifically folks who they've already launched their franchise. And I know you shared with me before we got started that you have a passion for helping people that are stuck. I have a passion for that too. So tell us a little bit about the observations you've had with in franchising in general, when people are franchising, they're just not sure what to do.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think they don't know what they don't know. So, if I would have had a mentor or a coach back in the day, I'd have been all over that and I would have jumped on it, because there's so many things that you just don't know and you find out by accident, and they can be very, very costly. I don't want to get into that, but when you're losing potentially about $60,000 a day because you did something wrong that someone could have prevented that's something that you have to look at, kind of seriously, running any business. But in franchising, having franchisees out there, they were affected by this problem that we had that could have been deflected for sure. So, because I why I want to help franchisors is I'm kind of a helping person. So my wife and I went to Central America to put up water tanks. We went there to try to help families and schools and so on. That experience really, that's what really got me into thinking back to franchising. Jeez, I know that there's franchisors out there. They're popping up like weeds, because anybody that thinks they have a great idea or they've got a proof of concept, they think they can take it nationally. And I'm a structure person, so I believe in structure. So I thought, okay, let's see, instead of going out and helping people buy a franchise, which that's great. There's a lot of consultants and businesses that are out there. They're helping people find the right franchise that they want to get into. I think it's bigger than that. I think when it comes down to the franchisor, you know as well as I know, you were one. I don't know how many sleepless nights you had, but I know how many I had. And, I got calls at 2:00. We were a 24-hour operation, 365 days a year around the country. I was getting calls at 2 a.m. from franchisees asking for guidance and assistance. So very, very, I understand that world real well. So you talk with a franchisor today, it's okay, what are your pain points? I mean, what really keeps you up at night? And that's an interesting question, because the answers that I get back from that are exactly what I expect them to be. And that goes back to franchisees. I just didn't know. I didn't know how to do this, didn't know how to do that. And that's where I really try to step in to help.
Well, Mike, all right. We've got a lot of franchise consultants that are out there and franchise attorneys that have been around a very, very long time. Why does this continue to happen? Are people not getting the right advice? There is plenty of information out there. We know exactly, you and I know exactly how to be successful in franchising. And there's thousands of franchisors. There's 400 new franchise companies that start every year and 400 quit every year. It's been like that since the beginning of the 2000s. Are franchise consultants giving bad advice so they can get that $125,000, $150,000 deal?
Yes to all of that. And so let me add another stat there. So according to Statista, which I look at their research quite a bit, but in 2023, there's 805,000 plus franchise establishments in the United States. 20% fail within the first year, 50% fail within the first 5 years. I believe that most franchisors, again, do not know what they're getting into. Having a great idea, that's not the recipe to try to build national success because you have a good idea. So let me give you an example. My wife and I were also a franchisee of the largest cruise agency on the globe. I'm not going to drop names on this podcast, but they're very big.
I know who it is.
Okay. So we paid $10,000 for the franchise. Mm-hmm. The support was fantastic. The onboarding was fantastic. The training was fantastic. The people were great. What made us get out of it 16 months later? Well, they were not upfront with regards to their technology. So my wife's a software architect. Shame on us for not really going into the weeds, into that system. And so it was just, there's no way. I mean, we just said, this is just crazy. I mean, we felt like we went back 20 years in our life because of this technology. So we dropped out, we terminated the relationship. They were great about it. Yeah, we threw away 10 grand plus. But the fact of the matter is that they truly overpromised and underdelivered. And that's a real problem in the franchise business today. So to go back to what you were saying, is that, are they being misguided? I would love to give my opinion on everything in this industry because I've been in it most of my career. But I will tell you this. I've learned, I put an ebook, I have an ebook on this, but I've learned that it goes in this way. You have to have a business plan. The business plan, before you contact an attorney and spend 50 to 100 grand on getting all your documents done, why do that? Why go to an attorney and do all of that? And then you sit back and say, okay, now what's the next step? Oh, I got to go get franchises. No, you need to have a plan. Then you need to prepare. So here's my steps: plan, prepare, educate / learn, execute, and evaluate. I believe in those 5 steps in this business. And if you've got a really good plan, which I write plans. So if you've got a really good plan and you're preparing yourself before, and you know what happens, Frank, to be honest with you, it's like I coached 15 years of baseball here in Tampa. It's like kids want to crawl and then they want to sprint. You can't do that when you're coaching. You got to learn the very basic fundamentals. Business is no different than sports. You get those fundamentals down and you get your plan in place. Doesn't have to be a big plan. It'd be 20 pages. You got your forecast. You got your budgeting. You have your goals set up. In our business plan that we talked about earlier, my wife and I built the largest parking reservation system in North America. It was a 62-page business plan with 5 pages of goals, 25 line items. So all those goals were reached except for one. We didn't want investment money. We wanted to grow it organically. Mm-hmm. So if you're a franchise today, or a franchisor, you have to think that you have to go beyond that. We have to make the franchisees successful in order to make the franchisor successful. So the franchisor has to have a plan. The franchisee has to have a plan. That's really my short version of how you create success between the bond of a franchisor and a franchisee.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.